Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is the October 2020 Mac Voices update and something a little extra special. October and the end of September for me were extra busy, both from a Mac Voices perspective and a work perspective. And as a result, some things that I had hoped to implement or get accomplished haven't quite gotten there yet. And it just, I have to tell you, I've been one of the very lucky people who has continued to work, been able to work from home, and it has been extra busy, and I'm overjoyed about that. So that is not a complaint; it's just a statement of fact. That said, though, the core Mac Voices things are continuing and have been right on track. The show schedule has been very solid. The newsletter schedule has been very solid, and articles get added to the Mac Voices magazine on Flipboard each and every business day. So the core services are sort of there. The others, we're still kind of trying to get back in the saddle a little bit and get them integrated into the schedule. And that's really about it. I did want to once again mention Mac Voices Live. We've been having a lot of fun with that. It's been quite an interesting little set of experiments. This last week we had what ended up being a three-part Mac Voices show out of one Mac Voices Live session. That was because of a session about the Apple announcements. I am trying to hold the Mac Voices episodes to somewhere between 30 to 35 minutes, give or take, wherever a logical break occurs in the conversation. So as a result, some of the longer things are coming out now in more pieces than just one or two, and I hope you're all with me on board with that. It makes them a little easier to consume each day, and also I think provides some nice logical breaks in there. So you'll continue to see more of that. Hopefully not those marathon sessions, but sometimes the subject is just too good to let go. So with that, let's get to the support report this time, because I'm putting this in sort of in the middle of this update as opposed to at the very end, and because at the end I want to tell you a little something. So for that, in October of this year, our PayPal supporters were Lawrence R. and Wally C., and our Patreon supporters, first up at Gold, we have David G., Tim G., Chuck P., at Silver, we had Bobby, Chuck A., Michael D., Bruce E., Hal P., George R., Daniel S. And at Bronze, we had Elizabeth Ann R., Michael L., Max C., Clinton M., John M., Frank P., and Prop P. First, I want to especially thank all the sponsors who support the show in whatever fashion they do. It's greatly appreciated. It keeps Mac Voices going, and we couldn't do it without you. I know that right now, during these challenging times, you're being asked to support more and more things, and all are all kind of worthy causes. And I deeply, deeply respect and appreciate the fact that you make Mac Voices one of the ones that you choose to support. So thank you very much. Just as a quick reminder for those who still aren't quite sure about how this whole thing works, the sponsorship listings get reset the first of each month. So in this case, if you added sponsorship or support sometime after September 30th, it shows up in October. If you did it during the month of October, it won't show up until November. So that's how that works. So if you've contributed and don't see your name or hear your name, that's why. It makes it a little bit easier just to try to keep things logical and break it down month by month. So that wraps up the October 2020 Mac Voices update. But stick around here for a second, if you will, and indulge me. I'd like to share a couple things with you. And I need to consult some notes here because otherwise I'm bound to get something wrong. On October 11th, 2005, I published the final edition of my first audio show, the User Group Report. The next day, October 12th, 2005, the first edition of MacNotables went live. And on October 15th, 2005, 15 years ago yesterday, as I record and release this, the first edition of Mac Voices was published. And I can't believe it's been 15 years. I mean, it kind of doesn't make sense. And I'd like to share with you a little bit of the history of Mac Voices for those who were not around at that time, didn't know what podcasting was, or maybe weren't in the Apple ecosystem. So first, let's talk about MacNotables. MacNotables was formed at the same time as Mac Voices with a closed panel of notables, people that were notable in the Apple sphere. It was not Apple notables because, first of all, that didn't sound quite right. But more importantly, back then, podcasting was new, and the Mac was Apple's primary product by far. So, MacNotables. The panel consisted, and it was a closed panel again, of Christopher Breen, Brian Chaffin, Jim Dalrymple, Dan Frakes, Adam Angst, Tanya Angst, Andy Anako, Ted Landau, Bob Levitas, Dennis Sellers, Jason Snell, and Robin Williams. And the whole format was we set up recording times, and then whoever was available or had something they wanted to talk about would come. So sometimes it might be one-on-one. Sometimes it might be a whole panel of people talking about whatever the subject was. It was a lot of fun, and it went on for quite a while. MacNotables got folded back into MacVoices March 2013. And one of the reasons that happened was we did not keep it separate simply because a lot of changes had occurred by that time. Some people had changed occupations, focuses had changed, and you will see that a lot of the names that you just heard still appear on MacVoices on a semi-regular basis. But some have their own podcasts now. Some went on to do other things. So it's like everything else. Things change and evolve. The next show, MacNotables, therefore, was a big part of MacVoices. And all of those episodes are available in the MacVoices archives, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's see. In January of 2009, I started 2 other shows, MacVoicesTV, which was basically a video version of MacVoices, in a fashion that you're probably a little more familiar with now, and the MacJury, which was a panel discussion show. The idea here was, up to that point, MacVoices had been pretty much one-on-one or maybe one-on-two on rare occasions, that kind of interview, but never really panel discussions where you had a lot of people getting around the table and kicking around the topic of the day. So the MacJury started, and that too was a completely separate entity, just like MacVoices and MacNotables. The MacJury was folded into MacVoices on December 2012. And one of the reasons that it made sense to do some of these things, to fold them all together, not 2 things. You'd have people that didn't know one but knew the other. And so I've never was able to successfully cross-promote adequately, at least not in my mind. And also it meant maintaining 4 separate websites. And that becomes a real hassle as well. So that's one of the reasons things folded all together into the MacVoices banner. MacVoices MacVoices TV folded in February of 2013. That's when I took the show all video, so that now there were no more just audio shows. We still obviously have audio feeds, and we always had audio feeds for everything. But video became more and more important. I attended a blog world, and I distinctly remember the moment that I decided, okay, I need to get into video. At one of the presentations, they pointed out that, at least at that time, I don't know if it still is or not, that YouTube was the second largest search engine in the world behind Google. And without having anything published to YouTube, you were not on the second largest search engine. So that made it a pretty easy decision to do. In the early days, I was using a different platform to distribute MacVoicesTV, the video versions, something called BlipTV that is no longer here. And the reason I went that direction was because BlipTV was allegedly designed specifically for video podcasts or vodcasts or whatever the terminology you want to use was at the time. I did eventually start uploading to YouTube, and that's where there's still, and it is still the feed that you see today if you visit. That is MacVoicesTV. That's the identity on YouTube. But when BlipTV left or went down, I needed to have a place to put all that legacy material. So I set up a second YouTube channel just to upload the legacy material from blip.tv. That is MacVoicesTV Legacy. and I'll put a link into the show notes if you're curious about that. There are a whole bunch of shows there that from the early days. That channel is not being updated at all. It's just there strictly as an archive legacy kind of thing. But it is a little bit fun to look back and see some of the way some of us all looked and the things we were talking about at the time. And I also should point out too that MacVoicesTV was, it was an experiment at the time. And a lot of times we would have parallel shows so that edition, 75 of Mac Voices might be edition 30 of MacVoicesTV. So same exact show, everything the same, except that they were being distributed through different feeds. And again, these are the reasons that it made perfect sense to pull back everything under Mac Voices. So 15 years later, here we are. I have one identity, and that's Mac Voices. Everything gets published there. If you go to the Mac Voices website and click on the archives link, and then there's a link right under that says expand all, it will list out every episode of Mac Voices, MacNotables, the MacJury, MacVoicesTV, even back to the user group report. And I think I'm proud to say that with the exception of a very few initial episodes of a couple things that were just simply lost files, everything remains online that has been published. So if you want to go back and listen or watch, okay, go right ahead. It's a little embarrassing because we didn't have the equipment or the knowledge or the know-how back then that I would like to think that we've achieved now, so that we are presenting something that's a lot more enjoyable. Still, it's kind of interesting to see how things have developed and evolved. Mac Voices has taken me places over these 15 years and made me friends that I would never have imagined. I have friends from all over the world that really some of my very best friends I might not get to see for a year, 2 years, 3 years, under the current circumstances, even more. But, I consider them my very best friends and just some amazingly intelligent people. And I can't thank you enough for all of that. The trade shows, Mac Voices Conference and Expo, of course, Paul Kent's operation, some really wonderful people there to work with. CES, NAB, MacStock, I've Blog Worlds. I know I will leave out things, and I really don't want to. So that's why I'm just trying to do it sort of off the cuff, because these have all been fantastic for Mac Voices, fantastic for me. I hope I've been able to share some of that with you. But I also want to do a lot of thank yous here. First of all, I want to thank you, the listeners and friends who have tuned into this. Still is a very strange experience to have someone walk up to me and say, I've been watching you for years. And my first reaction is, really? I didn't know anybody was really watching. But you all have made this possible just by continuing to watch and giving me a reason to continue to publish these things. Definitely to all the guests, everyone who's ever been on Mac Voices, whether they've been on lots of episodes or one episode. Thank you so much for giving of your time and your expertise to entertain and inform the audience. Definitely the sponsors and the folks who have helped support Mac Voices over the years. You've allowed us to grow, do things we wouldn't have financially been able to do otherwise. And really just everyone associated with it. I've left out the Mac Roundtable. The Mac Roundtable was a group of podcasters that got together and, we're sort of doing our own thing for a while as a group. That was a whole lot of fun. Just the projects and efforts and things that have kind of come and gone over the years, it's easy to forget them. And that's one reason for me, it's kind of fun at times to go back to the Mac Voices archive, look through and say, I forgot all about that. Or not that I forgot it. I didn't mean to forget it. It just kind of happens. So I'm rambling a little bit because this is sort of a time of reflection for me, and I don't do this very often. I sort of let the anniversaries pass by, but 15 years struck me as a big one. So I wanted to share a little bit of that with you. If you have questions or comments or thoughts, I'd love to hear from you. I'm happy to answer anything. I should note one thing, though. This always comes up, and so I will explain it one more time. And this was true from every single show I've done. My numbering system is a little bit strange. I didn't start with episode 1 and end with episode X or whatever. I always put the number of the year first, and then the number of the episode for that year in back of it. So episode 913 would have been the 13th episode I did for the year 2009. And so if you go through the archives, you'll see a lot of what might, until you understand that, might be confusing numbers. But that was a way to keep track of everything. And it also meant that, there were not overlapping numbers, especially with all the shows. So that's something I always, I figure I'll just save myself a few emails there, because otherwise they don't seem to make sense. So that's it, 15 years of Mac Voices. Thank you so much for being with me, whether you've been here for 15 years or whether you just subscribed yesterday. I hope to continue to earn your time and your eyeballs and your ears with information that informs and entertains. And hopefully I'll see you on Mac Voices Live one of these nights. Until the next time, and as always, after 15 years, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.